Welcome along. Today we are talking about a topic that weighs heavily on so many healthcare professionals' minds, trying to positively impact people's lives, and what that is getting negative comments online. Now, I see this fear in my clients and I hear it from my colleagues all of the time. The worry that by putting themselves out there, by sharing our knowledge in a very public way, we could say or write something, even just once, that leads to everything that we've worked for being called into question. Maybe you are sitting at your desk and you're reflecting on a client session whilst preparing a blog or a social media post with the sole purpose of educating and connecting with your audience and helping people. You're being so careful with your words. You're scrutinizing every phrase to make sure that it's accurate and it's balanced. And you wonder to yourself, did I phrase this right? Am I providing enough context? What if someone understands or misunderstands this and it spirals out of control? And these thoughts keep running through your mind and they can hold you back from posting or even pausing over that publish button. So on the one hand, you know that your knowledge can make a huge difference and help so many people. And for many of us, this is our driving force. You've got this information, you've got these skills, and you've got a desire to help people who truly need it. But there's also this constant nagging doubt eating away at the back of your mind that if you say one thing that's slightly off, or if you've missed some new research on a topic and you're not as up to date as you should be for someone who's sharing information with the public, or, what if someone criticizes you publicly or disagrees strongly, or worst of all, accuses you of being unprofessional? Now, for some, that fear goes as far as worrying that it could endanger your HCPC registration or your license to practice. And so what happens is you keep editing, you're holding back, you're playing it safe, you're doing everything you can to avoid that worst case scenario. So imposter syndrome thrives here, doesn't it? That's what we're dealing with. It whispers, are you sure that you are the right person to be giving this advice? Aren't there others with more experience and more credentials? And what if someone challenges you? Even if you've got decades of experience, that worry creeps in. And you're certainly not alone with this. I've experienced it too, even with 18 years as a pediatric dietitian under my belt. And it's something that so many healthcare professionals experience, a mix of wanting to help and being terrified of somehow getting it wrong. But here's the thing, this fear is real, but it doesn't have to stop you. Every healthcare professional stepping into the public eye deals with this. And today I'm going to share with you why this experience of facing negativity or even trolling is not just normal, but in a way it's even a good sign because it means that people are paying attention. And I'll also show you how you can take back control over these situations and respond in a way that protects both your well-being and actually your business as well. So as healthcare professionals, you will no doubt have spent years building up your expertise, working to make a real difference in people's lives. But then as soon as you begin to share that expertise online, it can feel like you're stepping into a whole new world, a one where people who don't know you feel almost emboldened to have strong and often very public opinions about your work. The reality is this online negativity isn't just an occasional issue, it's actually predictable. And the more you grow, the more visible you become, the more likely it is that you're going to experience it. So sometimes that negativity starts as criticism of your message. Maybe they disagree with your advice. Maybe they have a polarizing opinion on your methods and call them into question. But sometimes it escalates beyond the professional realm and it becomes deeply personal. And this is when it can really, truly feel quite unsettling. You might find that people don't just agree with what you say, but they start targeting you on things like how you look, what you wear, or even personal things like your weight or your hairstyle or your gender. It's almost as though the internet gives people permission to comment on anything about you, about aspects of your life that actually have nothing to do with your professional expertise. It can feel personal, even cruel. And in extreme cases, this kind of trolling can become more than just annoying or unsettling. For some people, it can escalate into stalking or harassment, which is why I wanted to record this episode for you, because I've experienced it all. And I've learned that it's actually essential to have ways to manage these interactions to protect yourself and your peace of mind. It's not easy to face the reality that this kind of negativity is inevitable, especially when you've worked so hard to build a career based on trust and credibility. But knowing that this is a real possibility can truly help you prepare. And that's what we're going to talk about, how you can keep yourself safe while staying 100% true to your mission of helping other people. But before we get into that, let's just dig into this real impact that this fear can have over you. So for many of us, that constant worry of negative comments or criticism can just hold us back. It can hold us back from fully sharing our knowledge. You might have a really valuable perspective, a new approach to share, or insights that could genuinely help people. But that fear, that sense that even one post could invite criticism, is enough to make you hesitate, and actually sometimes indefinitely. So instead of sharing your knowledge, you might end up second guessing yourself, rewriting every sentence, trying to make it perfect to avoid that potential backlash. Or maybe you just don't post it at all, which means that people miss out. They don't get your help. And I've seen this pattern time and time again with my business coaching clients who have so much to offer. They are so knowledgeable. They are deeply invested in helping others. After all, that's why they're working with me. But that nagging worry that if they say the wrong thing, or if someone misinterprets their message, it could jeopardize their professional reputation or even their license to practice. And that can actually become paralyzing. It's like a constant tension between wanting to stand by your expertise and fearing the consequences of being too visible. So let me share my experience with you. I remember my first real experience of this kind of online negativity so vividly. I'd been at a conference all about infant nutrition, and one of the speakers had presented some new research on baby sleep. It was 2018. I was fairly new to Instagram, and you know what? I was killing it. I had this rapidly growing, engaged following who seemed to be really excited about my new posts. So in the lunch break of this conference, I put together a post on baby sleep and nutrition based on this new learning that I'd literally just received. It wasn't just a quick Instagram story, it was advice I felt really passionate enough about that I really wanted to share it. I genuinely wanted to help people who struggle with sleep routines. Sleep, for those of you who have children, will know that it is a huge issue in the early years. So I was really excited to share it. I was hoping it would bring some relief to families navigating those sleepless nights. But almost immediately, the reaction that I got wasn't what I expected. My notification feed lit up, and there it was, a comment from a parenting coach who publicly, vehemently disagreed, questioning my approach. And then, before I could even catch my breath, she tagged in a very famous nutrition professional who chimed in to say she hadn't seen any research of this sort, and so I was wrong. My heart sank. Suddenly, it wasn't just a friendly professional conversation or a respectful disagreement. It was a public challenge, questioning my dietetic knowledge, and it felt deeply uncomfortable. I remember my anxiety levels rising, my cheeks growing warm as I read through their comments, my stomach tightening and, breaking out into that classic cold sweat. I felt a level of vulnerability that I hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just feedback. It really felt personal. Here I was, someone who cares deeply about sharing helpful information to my really engaged online audience, and being told publicly and emphatically that I was wrong. I actually didn't know what to do. My mind raced. Should I defend my stance? Should I explain myself? Or should I just stay quiet and let that comment stand? So I decided I was going to respond to a few of those posts during that lunch break. But as quickly as I was replying, more and more and more not very nice comments were being posted. So lunch break was over, went back into the conference for the afternoon session, and I chose to ignore my phone for the rest of the day. I honestly couldn't tell you what the rest of that conference was about. My mind was elsewhere. And when I opened up my Instagram app on my way back to the tube station, I had over 1,000 comments. The post had gone viral, but not in a good way. In that moment, I honestly felt paralyzed. I ended up switching off the comments on the post altogether and deleting the app. In fact, I hid from Instagram for days afterwards, feeling too wounded and shaken up to reinstall the app. I was too overwhelmed with that wave of self-doubt. And in that silence, the question started creeping in. Was it worth it? Was putting myself out there worth this discomfort, this level of vulnerability? I'm sure that many of you have felt that same wave of doubt and exposure. It's not just a little sting, it's a really gut deep vulnerability that makes you wonder whether staying quiet might have been easier, it might have been safer. It's a moment where the impulse to protect yourself starts to feel stronger than the desire to share and help. It's this emotional tug of war where each negative comment, each disagreement feels like it's pulling you further and further from the confidence you had when you first started posting. But here's what I learned, and it's something that I've had to remind myself many, many times since. These reactions, as painful as they feel, often have more to do with the person behind the comment than you. When someone lashes out at you or leaves a particularly hurtful message, they're often projecting something onto you, their own frustrations, their own insecurities, or even experiences that may have got nothing to do with what you've just shared. In that sense, it's almost like they're bringing their baggage to your doorstep, and it's their choice. It's not a reflection of you. Another thing that took me time to realize is this negativity was actually a sign of something really important. It meant my message was reaching people. It was resonating with them enough that they felt the need to respond, even if that response wasn't positive. I began to see what happened in a new light, that encountering friction, facing pushbacks was just part of growth, personal growth, but also growth of my business and my brand. It was like a rite of passage. As the saying goes, life is like a video game. If you keep meeting enemies, you know you're going the right way. I'm not sure who said that, but it really resonates with me. So back to my story, what did I do? Well, I left it about 4 days or so, I can't remember exactly, and then I reinstalled the app, and nothing bad had happened. Switching off the comments on my post meant that nothing new had popped up except for about 1,000 new followers and one DM from that famous nutrition professional asking me for clinical supervision because she felt that she wasn't as up to date as she should have been. That made me realize that I truly hadn't done anything wrong. In fact, I was a pioneer and other people were looking up to me. So I crafted a new post. I detailed the research plus the full reference and I shared it with the world. Yes, I did get some more backlash, but a few days off Instagram to lick my wounds meant that I could cope better this time round. So in hindsight, that experience taught me one of the most valuable lessons, that how I choose to respond was 100% within my gift. I can't control how others react, only how I respond to them. I learned that reacting defensively or impulsively only adds fuel to the fire, making a difficult situation actually even harder. But my biggest learning was to decide how I was going to handle these situations should they arise again in the future, not just for my own peace of mind, but to keep my focus on what mattered most, sharing my knowledge with those who truly needed it. And that is what I'm going to share with you right now. So let's start with before you post anything. Now, this might seem obvious. I know as healthcare professionals, you aren't going to post anything that's not evidence-based, but take a moment to think about what you want your audience to feel, to think, and to do after seeing your post. Ask yourself, how do I want my message to land with them? When you take time to truly know your audience, you can connect with their emotions, and it really does help your message land in the way that it's intended. You'll be able to choose the tone and the wording that's going to resonate best with them. Number 2 is about preparing yourself mentally. This is all about mindset, and it helps make you far more resilient when negativity does come up. So, for example, you could start each day reading a series of short affirmations about your mission, why you are doing this business in the first place, and the impact that you're making. Or perhaps you keep a feedback log that you read to remind yourself of all the positive praise that you've received from clients and followers who really do appreciate your work. A regular practice of small positive actions can help create almost an emotional buffer, so that when something critical or negative does come your way, you're more resilient to it and it won't hit as hard. So number 3, let's get into real time. What do you do if you get negative comments? So I want you to remember here that you get to decide how to respond. It's your right to decide which comments belong in your space and which ones don't. So don't be afraid to block or delete comments that cross a line. I do this all the time. If someone is consistently negative, you don't need them in your world. I had this recently with an ex-nurse who initially complained about a photo that I'd shared, a stock image of a baby surrounded by fruit, and one of those fruits were grapes. And of course, grapes are a choking hazard. So initially she pointed this out, but then she went on to get quite nasty and even said she was going to report me to Joe Wicks. Now, I'm not entirely sure what Joe Wicks would have done, but nevertheless, I didn't need her in my world, and so I blocked her and deleted her. At the end of the day, your little corner of the online space is just that. It's yours. It's a space where you should feel comfortable, where you should be able to share your expertise freely and safely. So if there are people there who aren't respecting that, it's totally okay to block them and delete their comments. So number 4, if things escalate or if you feel like the comments are crossing legal boundaries, like if someone's spreading harmful or slanderous information, then do not hesitate to seek legal advice. In some cases, you might be able to issue a cease and desist letter. I've been there as well. It might feel a bit extreme, but a legally worded letter can sometimes be a necessary approach to protect both your professional integrity and your mental health. And then number 5, when it comes to responding, you've actually got a few options here, depending on the situation and also your own preferences. So one approach that I find really useful is the compassionate response. So sometimes acknowledging the other person's perspective can actually help neutralize the situation. So something as simple as, thank you for sharing your thoughts. My view is, or I appreciate hearing different perspectives. Here's where I'm coming from. This can often be enough to diffuse that tension, and surprisingly, this approach often brings out a softer response from the other person. in my experience, people then realize that they might have been a bit harsh with their words, and they may end up apologizing or explaining that they've had a bit of a bad day today. So a little bit of understanding here can often go a long way. But sometimes the best response actually is just no response at all, because not every comment deserves your energy or your attention. It can be incredibly empowering to choose silence, to decide that some feedback simply doesn't merit your engagement. Remember, every response requires some of your time, and if it's negative, a lot of your energy, and you get to choose where you direct those. One of the biggest lessons I learned with my experience that I shared with you, and something I encourage all of you to keep in mind, is to avoid escalation. So when that parenting coach publicly disagreed with me, my initial reaction was defensive. And it actually just added fuel to the fire. If I had taken a step back and given myself a little more time, rather than firing off responses to all of those initial comments, I might have responded differently, or maybe not even responded at all. Reacting impulsively or emotionally actually can often make things worse. So try and give yourself a little bit of time to pause, even if it's just for a few minutes before you decide how, or actually whether, to respond. And then finally, I wanted to recommend a book that helped me a lot when it came to handling criticism online. It's called Hug Your Haters by Jay Baer. The book is all about how you handle complaints, criticism, negativity, but in a really constructive way. One of the things it highlights is the power of not taking these comments personally, and instead viewing them as opportunities to clarify, to connect, or simply to practice resilience. I'll pop a link to the book in the show notes so you can have a look if you like. So today we have covered some powerful truths about the not so nice side of business, about managing negativity online. We explored why, as you grow your online presence, encountering criticism and even trolling almost becomes inevitable, unfortunately. We talked about the fear that can hold you back and how these reactions often say more about the commenter than about you. And I shared my own story and what I've learned. While we can't control others' responses, we certainly can control our own. And we've gone through some very practical steps you can take, from setting boundaries and handling comments to responding with compassion or simply choosing silence. So the key here is to stay grounded in your purpose, to protect your energy, to keep sharing your message confidently, because remember, every step you take to show up in this space strengthens your resilience, strengthens your brand, and with that, your impact does grow stronger. So my action step for you today is choose one message, one piece of advice or an insight perhaps that you've been holding back from sharing, and post it. But before you do, just take a moment to think about how you want your audience to feel and let that intention guide your words. Share it confidently, knowing that your voice, your expertise, and your unique perspective are valued and they are needed. And remember, you've now got the tools to handle whatever reactions come your way. When you take a small step like this, you're building your own resilience, you're amplifying your impact, and you are staying true to your mission of helping other people with their health. So that's it for today, but join me next time for an episode called Earn While You're Off. 4 easy tactics to keep cash coming in over Christmas. So if you're someone who is dreading this whole feast and famine cycle that happens whenever you take some time off, you absolutely won't want to miss this episode. Bye for now.